He went straight to his gun. He put the end in his mouth and fired. Henry Morrison spent most of his life feeling angry. It was his nature. When he was a boy, he had a bad temper. Now, as a man, he was impatient with people who were slow or stupid. He was good at his job. He could tell when people were doing something the wrong way, and he told them in a loud, clear voice how to do it better. The company directors always followed his advice. Now Morrison was 49. His wife had left him 2 years ago because she couldn't live with his bad temper. She had met a quiet university teacher in Boston, ended her marriage with Henry, and married the teacher. Henry wanted very much to keep their daughter, Barbara, who was then 16. With the help of clever lawyers, he succeeded. A few months after he separated from his wife, Henry had a heart attack. He was better again in 7 months, but his doctor gave him some strong advice.
Stop smoking and drinking now, or you're a dead man, Henry. And I think you should leave the business world too. You've got enough money. Why don't you buy a small farm and live quietly in the country?
So Henry looked around and bought a small farm in Dublin with a comfortable farmhouse. A little river, the Cold Stream, ran along the bottom of the garden, and the house was called Coldstream Heights. He found a local man, Gary Irving, to live on the farm and work for him. Barbara was moved from her private school in New York to one in France. She would come home for the holidays. Henry did stop smoking and drinking. When he decided to do something, he always did it immediately. There was work for him on the farm. He helped Gary to plant corn in the field, and he bought 2 sheep to keep the grass short. There was only one thing that annoyed him, his neighbor, Simon Wheeler. Wheeler owned the land next to his, including the banks of the Cold Stream and the right to catch fish in it. Henry wanted to be able to fish a little. He also wanted to feel that the part of the river which he could see from the house belonged to him. But when he offered to buy the fishing rights, he was told that Wheeler refused to sell. Henry did not give up easily. The next week, he telephoned Wheeler, inviting him to his house for a drink. Wheeler arrived in a new Cadillac, driven by a young man. He introduced the young man as his son, called Darren. Wheeler was a rather small, thin man with cold gray eyes.
The Wheelers don't sell their land,
He said.
We've had the same land for nearly 400 years, and the river's always been ours. I can't understand why you want it.
I just like to do a little fishing in the summer, and I think you'll agree that the price I offer isn't bad. $20,000 for about 230 meters of fishing rights. You won't get such a good offer again in your lifetime,
said Henry.
I'm not interested in my lifetime. I've got a son here,
Wheeler said with a little smile. The son was a good-looking boy with dark hair and strong shoulders, taller than his father. He sat there with his arms crossed and seemed to share his father's negative attitude. Still, he smiled as they were leaving and said,
"You've made this house look very nice, Mr. Morrison."
Henry was happy.
I see you like old-fashioned things. That scarecrow in your field. We haven't seen one of those around here for many years,
Said Wheeler.
I'm trying to grow corn out there. I think you need a scarecrow in a cornfield.
Henry said. Darren was looking at a photograph of Barbara, which stood on the hall table.
"Pretty girl."
He said. Henry said nothing. The meeting had failed. Henry wasn't used to failing. He looked into Wheeler's cold gray eyes and said,
I've got one more idea. I could rent the land by the river for the rest of my life, and then it goes to you or your son. I'll give you $5,000 a year.
I don't think so, Mr. Morrison. Thank you for the drink and goodbye.
Stupid man,
said Henry to Gary as the Cadillac moved off. But he smiled. Life is a game after all. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. It was early June. The corn which they had planted had grown high. Henry and Gary had made a scarecrow from sticks. They had dressed it in an old coat and trousers that Gary had found and had put an old hat of Henry's on its head. Henry tried to think of ways to annoy Wheeler, to force him to rent part of the river to him. But he forgot about Wheeler when Barbara came home for the summer holidays. Henry met her at the airport in New York, and they drove up to Dublin. Henry thought she looked taller. She was certainly more beautiful. Henry said,
I've got a surprise for you at home.
Oh, a horse perhaps.
Henry had forgotten she was learning to ride.
No, not a horse.
The surprise was a red Toyota. He had remembered, at least, that Barbara's school had taught her to drive. She was very excited.
Oh, Father, you're so sweet and you're looking very well.
Henry and Barbara went for a drive in the new car the next morning. In the afternoon, Barbara asked her father if she could go fishing in the stream. He told her that she couldn't, and he explained the reason.
Well, never mind. There are a lot of other things to do.
Barbara enjoyed going for walks, reading, and doing little jobs in the house. Henry was surprised one evening when Barbara arrived home in her Toyota, carrying 2 fish. He was afraid that she had gone fishing in the stream, even though he had told her not to.
Where did you get those?
I met the boy who lives there. We were both buying petrol, and he introduced himself. He said he'd seen my photograph in your house. Then we had coffee together.
The Wheeler boy?
Yes, he's very nice. Perhaps it's only the father who's not nice. Well, Darren said, come and fish with me this afternoon. So I did. It was fun.
I don't. Please, Barbara. I don't want you to mix with the Wheelers.
Barbara was surprised but said nothing. The next day, Barbara said she wanted to go to the village to buy some shoes. She was away for nearly 4 hours. Henry didn't question her. Then on Sunday morning, Barbara said there was a dance in the nearest town, and she was going.
I can guess who you're going with,
Henry said angrily.
I'm going alone, I promise you. Girls don't need a boy to take them to dances now.
Henry realized that he couldn't order her not to go to a dance, but he knew the Wheeler boy would be there. And he knew what was going to happen. His daughter was falling in love with Darren Wheeler. Barbara got home very late that night, after Henry had gone to bed. At breakfast, she looked fresh and happy.
I expect the Wheeler boy was at the dance,
said Henry.
I don't know what you've got against him, Father.
I don't want you to fall in love with an uneducated country boy. I sent you to a good school.
Darren spent 3 years at Harvard University. I'm almost 18, Father. I don't want to be told who I can and can't see,
Barbara said as she stood up. Henry shouted at her,
They're not our kind of people.
Barbara left the room. During the next week, Henry was very upset. In his business life, he had always been able to force people to do what he wanted, but he couldn't think of a way to do that with his daughter. The next Saturday evening, Barbara said she was going to a party. It was at the house of a boy called William, whom she had met at the dance. By Sunday morning, Barbara hadn't come home. Henry telephoned the Williams house. A boy answered and said that Barbara had left the party early.
Was she alone?
No, she was with Darren Wheeler. She left her car here.
Henry's face turned red. His hand was shaking as he picked up the telephone to call the Wheeler house. Simon Wheeler answered. He said Barbara was not there, and his son was out at the moment.
What do you mean? Do you mean he was there earlier and he went out?
Mr. Morrison, my son has his own ways, his own room, his own key, his own life. I'm not going to.
Henry put the telephone down. Barbara was not home by Sunday evening or Monday morning. Henry didn't want to inform the police. On Tuesday, there was a letter from Barbara written from Boston. It said that she and Darren had run away to be married.
You may think this is sudden, but we do love each other and we know what we're doing. I didn't really want to go back to school. Please don't try to find me. You'll hear from me next week. I was sorry to leave my nice new car. Love always, Barbara.
For 2 days, Henry didn't go out of the house, and he ate almost nothing. He felt like he was dead inside. Gary was very worried about him. When he needed to go to the village to buy some food, he asked Henry to go with him. While Gary did the shopping, Henry sat in the car, looking at nothing. But then a figure coming down the street caught his eye. Simon Wheeler. He hoped Wheeler wouldn't see him in the car, but Wheeler did. He didn't stop, but he smiled his unpleasant little smile as he walked by. At that moment, Henry realized how much he hated Wheeler. His blood boiled with anger, and he felt much better. He was himself again. Wheeler must be punished. He began to make a plan. That evening, Henry told Gary that he should go away for the weekend and enjoy himself.
You've earned a holiday,
he said, and gave him $200. Gary left on Saturday evening in the car. Henry then telephoned Simon Wheeler and said it was time they became friends. He asked Wheeler to come to Coldstream Heights again. Wheeler was surprised, but he agreed to come on Sunday morning at about 11 for a talk. He arrived in the Cadillac alone. Henry acted quickly. He had his heavy gun ready, and as soon as Wheeler was inside the door, he hit him on the head several times with the gun until Wheeler was dead. He then took off his clothes and tied an old cloth around the body. He burned Wheeler's clothes in the fireplace and hid his watch and rings in a drawer. Then Henry put his arm around Wheeler's body and pulled him out of the house. He took his body up the field to the scarecrow. The corn had already been cut. He pulled down the old scarecrow and took the clothes off the sticks. He dressed Wheeler in the old coat and trousers, tied a small cloth around his face, and put the hat onto his head. When he stood the scarecrow up again, it looked almost the same as before. As Henry went back to the house, he turned around many times to admire his work. He had solved the problem of what to do with the body. Next, he buried Wheeler's watch and rings under a big plant in the garden. It was now 12:30, and he had to do something with the Cadillac. He drove it to some woods a few kilometers away and left it there after cleaning off all his fingerprints. He hadn't seen anybody. Soon after he got home, a woman telephoned from Wheeler's house, his housekeeper Henry guessed, to ask if Wheeler was with him. He told her that Wheeler had left his house at about 12, and he hadn't said where he was going. He said the same thing to the policeman who came to see him in the evening and to Barbara when she telephoned from Boston. He found it easy to lie about Wheeler. Gary arrived back the next morning, Monday. Gary had already heard the story in the village and also knew that the police had found Wheeler's car not far away in the woods. He didn't ask any questions. In the next week, Henry spent a lot of time watching the scarecrow from his upstairs bedroom window. Simon Wheeler's body was drying, slowly, slowly in the wind. After 10 days, the policeman came back with a detective. They looked over Henry's house and land, and they looked at his 2 guns. They found nothing. That evening, Barbara came to see him. She and Darren were at the Wheeler house. It was very hard for Henry to believe she was married. It had all happened so fast.
Darren's very worried and upset. Was Mr. Wheeler unhappy when he visited you?
She asked. Henry laughed.
No, very cheerful and happy with the marriage. Are you going to live at the Wheeler house?
Yes, I'll take some things back with me.
She seemed cold and sad, which made Henry unhappy.
I know what's in that scarecrow,
said Gary one day.
Do you? What are you going to do about it?
Henry asked.
Nothing, nothing.
Gary answered with a smile.
Perhaps you would like some money, Gary. A little present for keeping quiet.
No, sir, I'm not that kind of man,
Gary said quietly. Henry didn't understand. He was used to men who liked money, more and more of it. Gary was different. He was a good man. The leaves were falling from the trees, and winter was coming. The children in the area were getting ready to celebrate the evening of 31st October. when people wore special clothes and had special things to eat and danced around singing songs. No one came to Henry's house that evening. There was a party at the Wheelers' house. He could hear the music in the distance. He thought of his daughter dancing, having a good time. Henry was lonely for the first time in his life. Lonely. At that moment, he saw a small light moving outside the window. He looked out. There was a line of figures crossing his field, carrying lights. He was angry. They were on his land. They had no right. Then he realized they were children. The figures were small. He ran downstairs and out into the field.
What do you think you're doing? Get off my property,
He shouted. The children didn't hear him. They were singing a song.
We're going to burn the scarecrow.
Get off my land.
Henry shouted, but he fell and hurt his knee. Now the children had heard him, he was sure, but they weren't stopping. They were going to reach the scarecrow before him. He heard a cry. They had got there. There were more cries. Perhaps their hands had touched the body. Henry knew he had reached the end. He had seen a lot of men in business reach the end. He had known men who had jumped out of windows. Henry went straight to his gun. He put the end in his mouth and fired. When the children came running back to the road, Henry was dead. Gary heard the shot from his room over the garage. He had also seen the children crossing the field and heard Henry shouting. He understood what had happened. He began walking towards the house. He would have to call the police. Gary decided to say that he didn't know anything about the body in the scarecrow's clothes. He had been away that weekend, after all.